Tommy Grant's boots scraped against the metal floor as he walked down the dim corridor. His body ached from working 16 hours at the terraforming plant. The muscles in his back felt like twisted cables. All he could think about was his bed and 8 hours of sleep before the next shift started. The corridor was quiet except for the steady hum of air recyclers. Most people on this level worked the same brutal schedules he did. They were all asleep by now, resting before another day of breaking rocks and processing minerals for the colony expansion. Tommy pulled his access card from his pocket as he approached door 2847. Then he heard it. A soft clicking sound like small stones tapping together. He stopped and looked around. The sound came again, quieter this time. Something was bundled against the wall next to his door. Tommy's tired brain took a moment to process what he was seeing. Torn cloth, the kind used in the maintenance tunnels, wrapped around something small. The bundle moved slightly and the clicking sound came from inside it. Every instinct told Tommy to call security. Strange objects in residential corridors meant trouble. But his hand reached for the bundle instead. He knelt down and pulled back a corner of the cloth. A tiny face looked up at him. Not human. The infant had scales that shimmered with a faint blue color under the lights. Its eyes were huge and dark, taking up most of its small face. Little arms moved weakly inside the wrapping. The clicking sound came from its mouth as it tried to make some kind of cry. Tommy's heart hammered in his chest. He looked down the empty corridor, then back at the baby. Where had it come from? Who would leave an infant alone like this? A wet, gasping sound made him turn his head. Something moved in the shadows near the recycling chute about 3 meters away. Tommy stood slowly, still holding the bundle against his chest. A figure lay crumpled against the wall. Female, he thought, though he was not completely sure. She had the same scaled skin as the infant, but hers looked dull and damaged. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Her chest barely moved as she breathed. "Please," she whispered. Her voice came through a small translator device on her collar, but the sound crackled with static. Don't hurt." The translator made a popping sound and went dead. The alien woman tried to speak again, but only clicking noises came out. Her large eyes fixed on the bundle in Tommy's arms. Even without words, Tommy understood what those eyes were saying. She was begging him to save her child. He looked down at the infant again. His movements were getting slower. Tommy had taken basic emergency training when he first came to the colony. He recognized the signs of severe dehydration. This baby was dying. The mother was dying too. Tommy knew the rules. Everyone who worked in the colonies knew them. Unregistered aliens found in residential areas had to be reported to security immediately. Anyone who helped them faced serious punishment. Loss of job. Deportation back to Earth. Tommy had watched it happen to a cargo worker named Pete last year. Pete had let a family of Kryn sleep in a storage bay during a cold period. Security found them and Pete was on a transport ship back to Earth within a week. The infant's clicking grew even softer. Its eyes started to close. Tommy made his choice. He did not think about it. He just acted. "Okay," he said quietly, adjusting his grip on the baby. "Okay, I have you." He pressed his access card to the panel and his door slid open with a soft hiss. His apartment was tiny, just one room with a bed, a small kitchen area, and a couch that folded out. But it was warm and clean and safe. Tommy laid the infant carefully on his bed. The small creature weighed almost nothing at all. Then he turned and ran back into the corridor. The mother had her eyes closed now. For a terrible moment Tommy thought she was already dead. Then he saw her chest move slightly as she took a shallow breath. "Come on," Tommy said, getting his arms under her shoulders and back. She was incredibly light, nothing but bones under loose skin and torn clothing. "You are coming inside too." Her eyes opened. She looked confused and frightened. She made clicking sounds and tried to pull away from him. "Your baby is inside," Tommy said firmly, even though he knew she could not understand him. "I'm not splitting you up. Come on." Maybe she heard something in his voice that needed no translation. She stopped fighting and let him lift her. Tommy half carried and half dragged her through his doorway. The door slid shut just as he heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Tommy froze and listened. Someone walked past his door without stopping. His neighbors had probably heard something or maybe even seen the alien woman in the hallway. But they were not getting involved. That was how things worked in the colony. Keep your head down. Mind your own business. Do not make problems. Tommy had just created a massive problem. He helped the mother onto his small couch. She was breathing heavily from the short movement. Tommy went to his kitchen and filled 2 containers with water. He brought one to the couch and helped the woman lift it to her mouth. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold it. Water spilled down her chin, but she drank desperately until the container was empty. As soon as she finished, she turned toward the bed where her baby lay. She tried to stand, but her legs would not support her. "Let me," Tommy said. He brought the second container to the bed. The infant's mouth opened slightly and Tommy carefully poured small amounts of water onto its tongue. The baby swallowed weakly. Tommy spent the next hour searching his kitchen and accessing his personal computer. He pulled up the colony database and searched for information on Valkyrie biology. The basic facts were free, but detailed medical information cost credits. Tommy watched 3 months of his savings disappear as he bought every file he could find about Valkyrie infant care. The file said Valkyrie could eat many of the same foods as humans but needed extra minerals. Their babies needed a special milk formula with specific proteins and nutrients. Tommy did not have infant formula. He had protein powder that he used for his own meals. He had mineral supplements. He had clean water. He mixed them together following the ratios in the medical files. It was not perfect, but it might keep the baby alive until morning. The mother watched him work. She tried to speak several times, but without her translator they had no way to communicate. Finally she pointed to herself and said one word clearly. "Shi'ara." Tommy pointed to his own chest. "Tommy." Then he pointed at the infant. "Baby?" "Kiva," the mother whispered. Tears ran down her scaled face. Tommy got Kiva to drink some of the mixture he had made. It was not much, but the baby's color looked a little better. The clicking sounds became quieter and steadier. Shi'ara reached for her child, but her arms were too weak to lift Kiva. She made a sound of pure pain at not being able to hold her own baby. "It is okay," Tommy said softly. "Rest. I will watch her." Shi'ara's eyes closed. Within seconds she was unconscious. Her breathing became deeper and more regular. Tommy looked at his wall clock. It showed 0237 in glowing numbers. His shift started at 1000 hours. He needed sleep badly. But every time he thought about lying down, he imagined Kiva stopping breathing or Shi'ara dying on his couch. So Tommy stayed awake. He sat on the floor between the bed and the couch. He kept watch over both mother and child as the colony night slowly passed around them. Morning light filtered through the thin window of Tommy's apartment. He had not slept at all. His eyes felt scratchy and his head ached, but he remained alert. Kiva was still breathing. Shi'ara was still alive. That was all that mattered right now. At 0600 hours his comm device buzzed. Tommy picked it up and saw the message from his shift supervisor. "Grant, you are scheduled in 4 hours. Confirm attendance." Tommy stared at the message for a long moment. He looked at Shi'ara sleeping on his couch. Her breathing was better than last night, but she was still terribly weak. Kiva lay wrapped in his cleanest towel on the bed. The infant needed feeding again soon. He typed his response. "Sick today. Cannot come in." The reply came back almost instantly. "You have not taken a sick day in 3 years, Grant. This better be legitimate." Tommy turned off the comm device without answering. He had just used his first sick day. He had 4 more available for the entire year. After that, missing work meant losing pay or worse, losing his job entirely. Kiva made a small clicking sound. Tommy went to the bed and carefully picked her up. She was so tiny and fragile. He prepared another mixture of protein powder and minerals, trying to match what the medical files said Valkyrie infants needed. Kiva drank a little more than she had during the night. Her large eyes opened and looked at him with something that might have been trust. Behind him Shi'ara stirred on the couch. Tommy turned and saw her eyes were open. She looked around his apartment with confusion at first. Then she saw him holding Kiva and her whole body relaxed. "Morning," Tommy said, knowing she could not understand without her translator. Shi'ara sat up slowly, wincing with pain. She reached out toward Kiva, and this time her arms were strong enough. Tommy carefully placed the infant in her mother's arms. Shi'ara pulled Kiva close to her chest and made soft clicking sounds. Tears ran down her face again, but these seemed different from last night. These were tears of relief. Tommy went to his kitchen and prepared food. He made a simple protein broth, unsure what Shi'ara could safely eat after being starved for so long. He brought it to her with more water. Shi'ara looked at the bowl, then at Tommy. She said something in her own language, the clicking sounds rising and falling in a pattern that seemed like a question. Tommy pointed to the bowl and mimed eating. Shi'ara understood. She drank the broth carefully, taking small sips. While she ate, Tommy examined her broken translator. He knew a little about electronics from his work at the plant. The device had a cracked power cell and a damaged speaker. He searched his apartment and found an old comm unit he no longer used. The power cell was compatible. It took him 30 minutes of careful work to swap the parts. When he activated the translator, it hummed to life. Shi'ara's eyes widened. "Can you understand me now?" Tommy asked. The translator processed his words and produced clicking sounds. Shi'ara responded with her own clicks, which the device converted to standard speech. "Yes," the translator said in a flat mechanical voice. "You fixed it. Thank you." "You are welcome," Tommy said. "What happened to you? How did you end up outside my door?" Shi'ara looked down at Kiva nursing weakly at her chest. For a long moment Tommy thought she would not answer. Then she began to speak. Her mate's name had been Veltrak. He worked in the deep mines, the dangerous tunnels where the colony extracted rare minerals. 3 months ago there was a collapse. 17 workers died, including Veltrak. The mining corporation said it was an unavoidable accident. They offered the families a small payment and told them the investigation was closed. Shi'ara had been pregnant with Kiva when it happened. She applied for widow benefits that the corporation promised to all workers. The corporation denied her claim. They said Veltrak had violated safety protocols. They said his death was his own fault. They offered her nothing. Shi'ara had lived in company housing. All mine workers and their families did. When the corporation denied her benefits, they also evicted her. She had nowhere to go and no money. She gave birth to Kiva in a medical clinic that charged her everything she had left. 4 weeks Shi'ara lived in the maintenance tunnels beneath the colony. She drank water from condensation pipes. She ate scraps from waste recyclers. She tried to produce milk for Kiva, but her own body was starving. The milk dried up. Kiva began to die. "I walked through the residential levels for 2 days," Shi'ara said quietly. "I knocked on 47 doors. I begged for help. For food. For anything. Every door stayed closed. Some people shouted at me through the speakers. They said I should go back where I came from. They said aliens were taking jobs from humans. They said I was probably lying about everything." Tommy felt something cold settle in his stomach. 47 doors. 47 people who turned away a starving mother and infant. "Last night I could not walk anymore," Shi'ara continued. Kiva had stopped making sounds. "I knew she was dying. I put her outside your door because I could not carry her any further. I thought maybe someone would find her after I was gone. Maybe someone would save her even if they would not save me." She looked at Tommy with her large dark eyes. "You are the 48th door. You are the only one who opened." Tommy did not know what to say. The weight of what Shi'ara had told him pressed down on his chest like a physical thing. He thought about those other 47 people. They probably had families of their own. They probably considered themselves good people. But when it mattered, they had chosen safety and convenience over compassion. "The corporation was wrong," Tommy said finally. "They cannot just let people die because it is cheaper than helping them." "They can," Shi'ara said. "They do. There are others like me. Alien workers who get hurt or sick. The corporation finds reasons to deny their claims. They disappear into the tunnels or die quietly where no one sees. The corporation saves money. No one asks questions." Tommy felt anger building inside him. He had worked for the Colony Corporation for 3 years. He broke his back in the terraforming plant for barely enough credits to survive. He knew the corporation did not care about workers. But he had not realized how deep the cruelty went. "I cannot send you back out there," Tommy said. "You and Kiva will stay here." Shi'ara's translator made a sound that might have been a gasp. "You will lose your job. The colony has rules against harboring unregistered aliens. They will punish you." "Probably," Tommy agreed. "But I am not throwing you out." "Why?" Shi'ara asked. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Why risk everything for strangers?" Tommy looked at Kiva sleeping in her mother's arms. He thought about those 47 closed doors. He thought about the kind of person he wanted to be. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because you needed help and I was able to give it. That is enough." Shi'ara was quiet for a long time. Then she said something in her own language that the translator did not convert. But Tommy understood it anyway. It was gratitude beyond words. His comm device buzzed again. Another message from his supervisor. Tommy ignored it. He had made his choice. Now he had to figure out how to make it work. The knock on Tommy's door came at 1430 hours. 3 sharp raps that made Shi'ara's eyes go wide with fear. Kiva had been sleeping, but the sound startled her awake. She began to click softly in distress. Tommy looked through the door viewer. 2 colony security officers stood in the corridor. Both wore the dark blue uniforms with yellow stripes that marked them as Enforcement Division. One was tall and broad. The other was shorter but carried herself with the stiff posture of someone who followed every rule exactly. Mr. Grant, the shorter officer called out. This is Officer Willis. Open the door, please. Your supervisor reported that you called in sick, but your biometric readings show normal health parameters. We need to verify your status. Tommy's mind raced. The colony tracked everyone's basic health through implanted monitors. They knew he was not actually sick. But that was supposed to be private medical data. The fact that security had accessed it meant someone higher up was already suspicious. He looked back at Shi'ara. She had pulled Kiva close and pressed herself into the corner of the couch. Her whole body trembled. Tommy made a decision. He pulled out his comm device and activated the recording function. Then he opened the door just wide enough to stand in the gap. Officers, he said calmly. How can I help you? Officer Willis frowned. Step aside, Mr. Grant. We need to conduct a welfare check. Do you have a warrant? Tommy asked. The taller officer, whose name tag read Chin, laughed. We don't need a warrant for a welfare check. Your supervisor has concerns about your well-being. Step aside. I am fine, as you can see, Tommy said. There is no emergency. You have completed your welfare check. Have a good day. He started to close the door. Officer Chin put his boot in the gap. We have reports of unusual sounds coming from this apartment, Chin said. His friendly tone was gone now. Clicking sounds. Alien vocalizations. Step aside or we will cite you for obstruction. Tommy's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. You just said you were here for a welfare check on me. Now you are talking about other reports. Which is it? Officer Willis pushed forward. Mr. Grant, you are making this difficult. We know you are harboring unregistered aliens. That is a violation of Colonial Code Section 47. The penalty is immediate termination of employment and deportation. If you cooperate now, we might be able to reduce the charges. Tommy held his ground. I want to see the documentation of these reports. I want to know who filed them and when. I want to know what legal authority you have to enter my private residence. We do not need to show you anything, Chin said. He was getting angry now. Move aside or we will move you. Behind Tommy, Kiva began to cry louder. The clicking sounds carried into the hallway. Willis smiled coldly. That is all the evidence we need, she said. Mr. Grant, you are under arrest for harboring illegal aliens. Step into the corridor with your hands visible. Tommy did not move. His comm device was still recording everything. I am invoking my rights under Colonial Charter Article 12. I am requesting immediate contact with Earth's Colonial Affairs Bureau. I am formally reporting a humanitarian situation that requires oversight. Both officers stopped. Willis's eyes narrowed. You cannot invoke Article 12 for criminal violations. Article 12 applies to any situation involving potential violations of sentient rights, Tommy said. He had spent his morning reading every colonial law file he could access. I am reporting that colony administration has systematically denied benefits to alien workers, resulting in deaths and humanitarian crisis. I have evidence. I have witnesses. And if you enter my apartment by force, I will ensure that every second of this interaction is transmitted to Earth. Chin looked at Willis uncertainly. Article 12 was rarely used, but it was real. If Tommy actually had evidence of systematic abuse, forcing entry could turn into a major legal problem. Earth's Colonial Affairs Bureau did not like colonies that created public relations disasters. You are bluffing, Willis said. But she sounded less certain. Try me, Tommy replied. The standoff might have continued, but a door opened down the hallway. An elderly woman stepped out. She was small and thin with white hair pulled back in a tight bun. Tommy recognized her as Mrs. Patterson from apartment 2851. She had lived on this level longer than anyone else. What is all this noise? Mrs. Patterson demanded. Some of us are trying to rest. Police business, ma'am, Chin said. Please return to your apartment. Police business in my hallway means it is my business too, Mrs. Patterson said. She walked closer, leaning on a cane. What is going on here? This man is harboring illegal aliens, Willis said. We are placing him under arrest. Mrs. Patterson looked at Tommy, then at the officers. Illegal aliens? You mean that poor Valkyrie woman and her baby? I saw them last night. They were dying in our hallway. This young man saved their lives. You witnessed unregistered aliens and did not report them? Willis turned on Mrs. Patterson. That makes you an accessory. I witnessed a humanitarian crisis, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. I witnessed compassion. Those are not crimes last time I checked. Another door opened. A large figure emerged. Grevenike was a Thorian, nearly 2.5 meters tall with rocky gray skin and 4 arms. He worked as an engineer in the power plant. Tommy had spoken to him a few times in the corridors, but they were not friends. Problem here? Greveneke asked. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. No problem, Chin said quickly. Thorians were strong and most security officers avoided confrontations with them. Private matter. Doesn't sound private, Greveneke said. Sounds like you are threatening my neighbor for helping someone. I helped translate for a Valkyrie worker last month. He told me about the corporation denying death benefits to families. Said it happened to many alien workers. Is that what this is about? Willis looked between Tommy, Mrs. Patterson, and Greveneke. More doors were opening now. Other residents were looking out into the hallway. This was not going the way the officers had planned. Mr. Grant, Willis said coldly, you have 48 hours to regularize your situation. That means the aliens must be registered with colony administration or removed from residential sectors. If you do not comply, we will return with proper warrants and sufficient force. Do you understand? I understand, Tommy said. 48 hours, Willis repeated. She turned and walked down the corridor. Chin followed her, glancing back several times. When they were gone, Tommy's legs felt weak. He leaned against the doorframe. Thank you, he said to Mrs. Patterson and Greveneke. Both of you. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did, Mrs. Patterson said. I have lived in colonies for 40 years. I have seen too many people look away when others needed help. I am tired of it. Same, Greveneke rumbled. Corporation treats alien workers like disposable parts. Time someone pushed back. Tommy nodded. I have 48 hours. I need to find a lawyer. I need to build a case. He stopped. He needed help. Real help. The kind he had not asked for in years. He looked at his comm device. There was one person who might be able to help. One person who had the legal training and the connections to Earth's bureaucracy. One person he had not spoken to in 5 years. His sister Carol. Tommy took a deep breath and composed a message. Carol, it's Tommy. I need your help. It's urgent. He hit send before he could change his mind. Inside his apartment, Kiva's crying had stopped. Shi'ara was singing softly to her in the Valkyrie language. It was a sound of hope in the middle of a crisis. Tommy had 48 hours to save them both. He hoped it would be enough. Carol's response came 6 hours later. Tommy had been pacing his small apartment, checking his comm device every few minutes. When the message finally arrived, his hands shook as he opened it. Tommy, I got your message. I'm sending you encrypted communication protocols. Use them. What you're describing could be big. I'm filing emergency protective orders now. Don't talk to security again without me present. I'll contact you in 2 hours. True to her word, Carol's face appeared on Tommy's screen exactly 2 hours later. She looked older than Tommy remembered. Her dark hair had streaks of gray now and there were lines around her eyes. But her expression was sharp and focused. Tell me everything, she said. Tommy explained the situation while Carol took notes on her end. Shi'ara sat nearby, holding Kiva and listening. When Tommy finished, Carol was quiet for a moment. This is worse than I thought, she said finally. But also better. Worse because the corporation has been doing this systematically. Better because that means there's a pattern. Patterns can be proven. Tommy, I need you to find other victims. Get their stories documented. Get evidence. How? Tommy asked. I don't even know where to start. You already started, Carol said. You have Shi'ara. She said there were others. Find them. After the call ended, Tommy looked at Shi'ara. Do you know how to contact the other families? The ones the corporation hurt. Shi'ara nodded slowly. Some of them still live in the maintenance tunnels. I can take you there. But it is dangerous. If security catches us in the tunnels without authorization. We have to try, Tommy said. Mrs. Patterson knocked on Tommy's door an hour later. She brought food and clean cloth that could be used for Kiva. Behind her was Greveneke carrying a small portable generator. Power in this sector gets cut sometimes, Greveneke explained. Corporation does it when they want to pressure residents. This will keep your lights on. How did you know? Tommy asked. Because it already started, Mrs. Patterson said. Power was cut to 3 apartments this morning. All 3 residents had come out to support you yesterday. The corporation is sending a message. Tommy felt cold. They're retaliating already. Of course they are, Mrs. Patterson said. But they're also scared. You invoked Article 12. That means Earth is watching now. The corporation has to be careful. Over the next day, word spread through the colony's lower levels. Tommy did not know how the information traveled so fast. Maybe Mrs. Patterson talked to her friends. Maybe Greveneke mentioned it to other alien workers. Maybe people just noticed that someone had finally stood up to the corporation. Shi'ara guided Tommy into the maintenance tunnels that night. They moved carefully through the dimly lit passages. The air smelled of recycled water and machine oil. In a wider section of tunnel, they found a small group huddled around a heating vent. 3 families. 2 Valkyrie, 1 Kryn, and 1 that Tommy did not recognize. All of them looked thin and tired. All of them had children. A Valkyrie male named Tokvan spoke first. His mate had died from an illness that the corporation medical center refused to treat. They said her condition was pre-existing and not covered by worker health benefits. Tokvan was left with 2 young children and no income. A Kryn female named Shessa told how her mate lost an arm in a loading dock accident. The corporation said he violated safety procedures by working too fast. They fired him and denied all medical coverage for a prosthetic. He killed himself 3 months later. Shessa now lived in the tunnels with their infant son. Each story was different in details but the same in the essential facts. The corporation found ways to deny benefits. They pushed alien workers and families into desperate situations. They counted on people being too afraid or too weak to fight back. Tommy recorded every testimony on his comm device using the encryption Carol had sent him. By the time they returned to his apartment, he had documentation from 11 families. 11 cases of systematic abuse. Carol reviewed the files and her expression grew harder with each one. This is good. This is solid evidence. I'm filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of all affected families. But Tommy, you need to be ready. The corporation will fight dirty. She was right. The retaliation began the next morning. Tommy's food ration card was declined at the distribution center. The system showed his account flagged for review due to irregular activity. When he complained, the attendant just shrugged and said it was computer error that would take days to fix. Greveneke found a formal reprimand in his work file for a safety violation that never happened. Mrs. Patterson received an eviction notice claiming she had exceeded her apartment's occupancy limit. The corporation was targeting anyone who supported Tommy. But something unexpected happened. Instead of backing down, more people came forward. A human mechanic named Frank brought spare food rations to Tommy's apartment. My daughter is married to a Valkyrie, he explained. I know what your friend Shi'ara went through. The corporation treats aliens like they're disposable. A Thorian medical technician named Brel offered to examine Kiva and make sure she was recovering properly. She brought medical supplies from the clinic, carefully logged as expired stock so no one would notice they were missing. Tommy's apartment became an unofficial gathering place. People came with food, supplies, information, and most importantly, their stories. The resistance network grew from 11 families to 20, then 30. Shi'ara, growing stronger each day, became the heart of the network. She spoke multiple alien languages and could translate between different species. She organized the documentation, making sure every story was recorded properly. She connected families who shared similar experiences. Kiva became something none of them had planned. The tiny infant, growing healthier with each passing day, represented hope. When people felt discouraged, they looked at Kiva and remembered why they were fighting. She was alive because one person chose compassion over fear. If that could happen once, it could happen again. The corporation escalated. Power cuts became more frequent. Food distribution was slowed down in certain sectors. Security patrols increased in the residential levels, stopping people randomly to check identification. But the community adapted. Greveneke installed more backup generators. Mrs. Patterson organized food-sharing networks so no one went hungry. People created alternate routes through the maintenance tunnels to avoid security patrols. On the 4th day after the officers first came to Tommy's door, something remarkable happened. Tommy stepped into the corridor and found a line of people waiting. Humans and aliens standing together. They had come to add their voices to the growing case against the corporation. An elderly human man named George spoke about how his Kryn supervisor had been fired without cause. A young human woman named Alice described how her alien co-workers were paid less for the same work she did. A Valkyrie engineer named Shi'ara brought documentation showing the corporation had been skimming money from alien worker pension funds for years. The evidence kept mounting. Carol worked around the clock on Earth, filing motions and protective orders. She got a temporary injunction preventing the corporation from evicting or firing anyone involved in the case until a full hearing could be held. Tommy sat in his apartment late that night, exhausted but unable to sleep. Shi'ara was teaching Kiva a Valkyrie lullaby. Mrs. Patterson and Greven K. were reviewing the latest documentation. The small room felt crowded but also warm. "We are making a difference," Shi'ara said quietly. "Even if we lose the legal case, we have shown people that change is possible. We have created community where there was only isolation before." Tommy nodded. She was right. Whatever happened next, they had already won something important. They had proven that people could stand together against injustice. That one act of kindness could spark a movement. Kiva made a happy clicking sound. She was trying to grab at the light patterns on the ceiling. Just a baby unaware of the battle being fought around her. Just a symbol of everything worth fighting for. The tribunal hearing was scheduled for 0900 hours in the Colony Administration building. Tommy woke at 0500, too nervous to sleep any longer. Shi'ara was already awake, feeding Kiva and humming softly. She looked at Tommy with worried eyes. "Today is the day," she said quietly. "Today is the day," Tommy agreed. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 0700 with breakfast. Greven K. came shortly after with a formal suit he had borrowed for Tommy to wear. It was too big in the shoulders but it looked professional enough. "You need to look proper for those bureaucrats," Greven K. rumbled. "Show them you are serious." At 0830, Tommy walked toward the administration building. He was not alone. Behind him walked Shi'ara carrying Kiva. Behind her came Mrs. Patterson and Greven K. Behind them came dozens of others. Humans and aliens together, all the families who had shared their stories, all the workers who had been abused by the corporation. Security officers stood at the building entrance. They looked uncertain as the crowd approached. One of them spoke into his comm unit, clearly asking for instructions. "The hearing is public record," Tommy said calmly. "We have a right to attend." The officers stepped aside. The tribunal room was designed to hold maybe 30 people. More than 60 crowded inside. The 3 tribunal judges sat at a raised desk at the front. They looked displeased at the crowd but said nothing. Judge Morrison, the head of the tribunal, called the session to order. "This hearing concerns the case of the Colony Corporation versus Thomas Grant, charged with harboring unregistered aliens in violation of Colonial Code Section 47. How does the defendant plead?" Tommy stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor. And I have filed countercharges against the Colony Corporation for systematic violation of sentient rights under Colonial Charter Article 12. The corporate lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Harrison, stood immediately. "Your Honor, the defendant is attempting to deflect from clear criminal violations. The countercharges are irrelevant to this hearing." "They are completely relevant," a voice said from Tommy's comm device. Carol's face appeared on the screen he had set up on the defendant's table. "I am Carol Grant, licensed attorney representing Mr. Grant and 37 other plaintiffs in a class action suit against the Colony Corporation. The evidence we present here today directly concerns whether my client's actions were criminal or humanitarian." Judge Morrison frowned. "Ms. Grant, you are appearing remotely from Earth. This tribunal is not required to recognize your authority." "With respect, Your Honor, you absolutely are required," Carol said smoothly. "Colonial Charter Article 8 grants any defendant the right to legal representation regardless of location. I have filed all proper documentation with the Colonial Affairs Bureau. You should have received it." One of the other judges, a woman named Chin, checked her tablet and nodded reluctantly. "The documentation is in order." "Then let us proceed," Carol said. "Your Honor, before we address the charges against my client, I need to inform you that this hearing is being live-streamed to Earth's public networks under the transparency provisions of Article 12. Any attempts to close these proceedings will be noted and reported." Harrison jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, I object. This is highly irregular." "It is completely legal," Carol countered. "Article 12 specifically allows public oversight of cases involving potential rights violations. The stream is already active. Approximately 15,000 people on Earth are watching right now." Tommy saw Judge Morrison's face go pale. 15,000 people watching meant this hearing was no longer a quiet internal matter. It was public. It was political. Earth's Colonial Affairs Bureau would be paying close attention. "Very well," Morrison said carefully. "Let the record show the proceedings are being publicly transmitted. Mr. Harrison, present your case." Harrison laid out the corporation's charges. Tommy had harbored unregistered aliens. He had violated housing occupancy limits. He had failed to report their presence to authorities. All of this was factually true. "The law is clear," Harrison concluded. "Mr. Grant broke multiple regulations. His motivations are irrelevant. The penalty must be enforced." Carol began her response. Your Honor, the defense does not dispute the basic facts. Mr. Grant did shelter Shi'ara and her infant daughter Kiva. But context matters. Mr. Grant encountered a dying mother and child outside his door. He provided emergency humanitarian assistance. Any person with basic compassion would have done the same. The law does not provide exceptions for compassion, Harrison said. Actually it does, Carol replied. She displayed a document on the tribunal screens. Colonial Charter Article 15 Humanitarian Exception Clause. It states that any colonist who provides emergency life-saving assistance to a sentient being in immediate danger cannot be prosecuted for regulations violated in the course of that assistance. Harrison's confident expression faltered. That clause applies to accidents and natural disasters, not to harboring illegals. The clause makes no such distinction, Carol said. Shi'ara and Kiva were dying. Mr. Grant saved their lives. Article 15 applies. Judge Morrison looked at the document carefully. Ms. Grant makes a valid point. However, the defendant continued to harbor the aliens after the immediate emergency passed. That goes beyond life-saving assistance. Which brings us to the countercharges, Carol said. Your Honor, I would like to call Shi'ara to testify. Shi'ara stood still holding Kiva. Her translator was working properly now, repaired by Greveneke. She approached the witness stand. Please state your name and status, Carol said gently. I am Shi'ara, widow of Veltrak who died in the mining collapse 3 months ago. I am the mother of Kiva. Tell the tribunal what happened after your mate died. Shi'ara's testimony was clear and devastating. She described how the corporation denied her benefits, how they evicted her while she was pregnant, how she gave birth in a clinic and was turned away with nowhere to go, how she lived in tunnels and watched her baby slowly starve. I knocked on 47 doors, Shi'ara said, her voice steady despite the pain in her words. 47 people turned me away. Mr. Grant was the 48th. He was the only one who helped. Harrison tried to interrupt but Carol cut him off. We have documentation from 37 similar cases. Alien workers injured or killed. Families denied benefits through technicalities and false safety violation claims. All of them pushed into desperate situations. All of them abandoned by the corporation that profited from their labor. Carol displayed file after file on the screens. Medical records. Death certificates. Benefit denial letters. Each one told the same story of systematic abuse. The Colony Corporation has been violating sentient rights on a massive scale, Carol said. They have been doing it deliberately to save money. Mr. Grant did not commit a crime. He exposed one. The tribunal room was silent. Even Harrison had no immediate response. Judge Morrison looked at the other judges. They conferred in whispers for several minutes. Finally Morrison spoke. This tribunal finds that the evidence presented raises serious questions about corporate practices. We are referring the matter to Earth's Colonial Affairs Bureau for full investigation. Regarding the charges against Thomas Grant, we find that his actions fall under the Humanitarian Exception Clause of Article 15. The charges are dismissed. The room erupted in cheers. Tommy felt his knees go weak with relief. Shi'ara was crying and holding Kiva close. Mrs. Patterson hugged Greveneke, barely reaching his chest. But Carol was not finished. Your Honor, we also request immediate protected status for Shi'ara and all plaintiffs in the class action suit. They cannot be deported or evicted while the investigation proceeds. Morrison nodded. Granted. All plaintiffs are granted temporary protected status pending resolution of the Colonial Affairs Bureau investigation. 6 months later, Tommy's apartment looked completely different. The walls had been knocked through to combine his unit with the empty one next door. The space was now a community center. Tables and chairs filled the main room. A corner had been set up as a play area for children. Shi'ara worked there every day as a cultural liaison, helping newly arrived alien families navigate colony bureaucracy. She had become an expert at cutting through corporate red tape. The corporation was much more careful now, knowing that Earth was watching closely. Mrs. Patterson ran a food distribution network from the center. Greveneke taught technical skills to anyone who wanted to learn. The center had become the heart of the residential sector, a place where humans and aliens worked together. Kiva was 6 months old now and growing fast. She was healthy and strong, her scales bright and vibrant. Tommy sat on the floor of the center, watching as Shi'ara encouraged Kiva to take steps. Kiva pulled herself up using a chair. She stood on wobbly legs, clicking excitedly. Shi'ara knelt a meter away, holding out her arms. Come on, little one, Shi'ara said in Velkari. You can do it. Kiva took one step then another. Her small feet were unsteady but determined. On the third step she stumbled and Tommy caught her. Kiva looked up at him and made a sound that was almost like laughter. "Good job, Kiva," Tommy said, smiling. Mrs. Patterson was teaching Kiva words and standard. The infant was beginning to understand simple phrases. Now Mrs. Patterson knelt beside Shi'ara. "Say the word, Kiva," Mrs. Patterson encouraged. "Say it for us." Kiva looked around at all the faces watching her. Tommy, Shi'ara, Mrs. Patterson, Grevin A.K., and dozens of others who filled the community center. Her small mouth worked trying to form the sounds. "Tagay," Kiva said. Then clearer, "Together." The room filled with applause and happy sounds in multiple languages. Kiva clapped her small hands, delighted by the reaction. Tommy felt his throat tighten with emotion. He looked at Shi'ara and saw tears in her eyes too. But they were good tears. Tears of joy and hope. "Together," Shi'ara repeated softly. "Yes, little one. That is exactly right." Tommy thought back to that night 6 months ago when he found a dying baby outside his door. He thought about the choice he made, the risk he took, and everything that had followed. One door opening instead of closing. One act of compassion instead of fear. That was all it took to change everything. Kiva took another step, more confident now. She was learning to walk in a world that was slowly learning to be better. A world where humans and aliens could stand together. A world where one person's courage could inspire a community. Tommy smiled and held out his hands. Kiva walked toward him, clicking happily, surrounded by the family they had all built together.